Popcorn Poops is brought to you by Audible.com. Please visit audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for a free audiobook and free 30-day trial of their subscription service. Audible is the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 150,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature, including fiction, nonfiction, and periodicals. Audible.com is offering a free audiobook download to listeners of Popcorn Poops along with a 30-day trial of their services. This week, we're recommending A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, narrated by Derek Jacobi. To download this or another audiobook of your choice, visit audibletrial.com/popcornpoops. Be sure to visit the correct URL so they know we sent you, and you'll be helping to support our show. Again, that's audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for your free audiobook.
My name is Jessica.
And my name is Dustin.
We are the Popcorn Poops.
Here at Popcorn Poops HQ, we produce a movie podcast and commentary track hybrid that may be synced up to whatever film we're talking about or enjoyed as a standalone audio program.
Today we will be watching the 1985 film Young Sherlock Holmes, directed by Barry Levinson. If you are syncing this recording up to the movie, go ahead and start the film and then press pause as soon as the Paramount vanity card completely fades to black.
It's time to start the movie. Syncers, press play at the beep after the countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And this is your pick this week, of course, and I guess this was a pretty important film to your childhood. This is actually the first time I've ever seen this week, watching this in preparation for the show.
Oh, really?
But just briefly, give us a kind of your history with this movie.
I mean, I don't know when the first time I saw it was. It was made in 85 and I was born in 87, so it could have been incredibly early in my childhood at any point, but I feel like I was maybe a little bit older when I saw it, which makes sense thinking of my parents because there are some pretty, well, I wouldn't say pretty graphic scenes, but there's some scary stuff.
There's some scary like 80s kids movie type stuff in here, sure.
So I don't think I was little, but I was pretty young when I saw it, and it just stuck with me when I was a kid. I just loved it, and I loved the characters, and oh god, I loved the romance too so much. And
loved past tense.
Unfortunately, as an adult viewing it again, that was unfounded, but I loved this movie when I was a kid. It just mesmerized me.
It does have that kind of Steven Spielberg magic to it, which, of course, he produced this, and when we see the opening credits, we'll be able to see the sort of a Steven Spielberg, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Dream Team, USC Dream Team kind of production where it's got people like Kathleen Kennedy in it, and Chris Columbus wrote the screenplay, and of course Barry Levinson, like all those people that were kind of around at the time and working with Steven Spielberg really closely. And it certainly has that feeling to it. It certainly has that magic, and the score really helps in that regard. Who did the score? I keep forgetting his name.
Bruce Broughton?
Bruce Broughton or Broughton, something like that. I had never actually heard of him before, but he's done some pretty notable things, as I understand, right?
Pretty notable is a good qualifier there.
Pretty.
Some of the stuff I found that at least popped out to me, and of course I'm sure there's other stuff in his history that is probably way more important, but I just don't care about. But like Homeward Bound, and the sequel, Tombstone. He did Tombstone.
Okay, yeah, that's a great score.
The Rescuers Down Under.
Okay, wow.
And then I thought this was funny because it was a tie-in, but he did a few episodes of the Logan's Run TV show.
Oh wow, yeah, we did that. We did that movie a couple of weeks ago. That's great. The music is really great, and I think that probably helps give us that feeling, that nostalgic kind of feeling.
It's fantastic. The main theme is
it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
It's so charming,
so memorable.
And we haven't hit it yet. We're going to hit it after the title card pops up. Mm-hmm. But once it pops up, you hear it and you're just like, oh yeah, this is an adventure. Yeah, I'm into it.
It's really good. And I think that, like I said, this is the first time I've actually watched this movie, and as long as I've known you, you would bring this movie up from time to time and say that it was really important to you and that you especially loved the character of Watson in this movie.
I still think that his acting is really great.
His performance is great. His
really
performance
great.
is really great. And you kind of held this up as one of the great films of your childhood, like kind of one of the movies that
it affected me.
Yeah.
It was one of those movies that it wasn't just that it was fun, because there were a lot of movies that were fun in my childhood, but this was one of those ones that I kind of didn't want to go back to it. Like when his girlfriend dies, when Elizabeth dies at the end of the movie, I was so devastated. And not because I cared about her, but because of his reaction. Because this cold, calculating guy who
is genius,
is a genius, and he's just so moved by this woman's death. And I think it instigated in my very, very young self a love for that kind of character, for the kind of hero who just is so intelligent or so brave or so whatever that he has like no emotion. He doesn't feel fear, he doesn't feel sadness, he doesn't feel anger, but his love for a person can be so strong that in those moments when they're in danger or they're harmed, that he breaks a little bit. And oh God, I just loved it.
Love conquers all.
Oh, I loved it.
This scene right here that we're watching right now with the character of Bobster, his name is Mr. Bobster, hallucinating and thinking that his room is coming to life and that
his roasted pheasant first.
Yeah, his roasted pheasant in the scene before this in the restaurant was great. It's a great little gross looking puppet, like all practical effects.
It was kind of like the turkey coming to life in which one was it? It was one of the House sequels. Was it 4? No,
right?
No.
Maybe
3?
House 3.
The one that wasn't actually a House sequel, but it was actually they just titled it a House sequel.
The one that was actually the horror show, maybe.
The one like the guy got electrocuted.
Yeah, the horror show. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in that one that a turkey comes to life on the dinner table, or it gets maggoty, or something like that.
Okay, I can't remember which House sequel it was. Now we're hearing the great great theme song. But that scene in his bedroom with all of his stuff coming to life feels very distinctly kind of influenced by maybe the Evil Dead movies.
Okay. I can see
I get that vibe from it. It's very, very Raimi-esque to make up.
Like the wall mounts and stuff moving of their own accord, and the lamps.
Raimi-esque, Raimian. I'm going to say Raimian. Yeah. This score is really, really great. Surprisingly great. And I said before that this was the first time coming to this movie for me, and for me, as an adult watching this children's movie for the first time, I can see that. I will really openly admit that I think it's kind of an excellent children's film. It's kind of an excellent little adventure movie.
I was terrified you were going to hate it because I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I have, and I loved it so much when I was a kid, and I haven't seen it since then. And I was a little scared to rewatch it because you always fear that you were just
a dumb kid.
Yeah. And so I was a little
Which
scared to rewatch it,
yeah.
But even after rewatching it, I was still kind of scared that you were still going to hate it because I know some of it's kind of silly and the especially when we get into like the stupid like
we have a disclaimer here I want to talk about. The following story is original. It says that the following story is original and not based on not specifically based on the exploits of Sherlock Holmes as described in the works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and it's a little strange to me. I think it's kind of lame, and I'm surprised that we don't see more of those these days, kind of in the age of the butthurt internet geek. And with all of the geek has kind of inherited the earth, and we see comic book movies, multiple comic book movies every single summer. Geek properties are the biggest properties. But this movie has a disclaimer saying, hey, don't get upset that we made up a Sherlock Holmes story. It's just for fun, total, respect to Doyle and his works. But then they do it again at the end of the movie.
They do it again at the end.
So they kind of bookend this movie with disclaimers that say essentially the same thing as please don't get upset that we made up our own Sherlock Holmes story.
Well, I mean, I will say though that like Sherlock Holmes geeks, like they've got to be
intense.
Pretty intense.
I don't think I've ever met one.
I don't think I have either.
But they've got to be pretty intense.
I would expect they'd be pretty intense because I mean to be a master of Sherlock Holmes, you've got to be maybe even as smart, let's dare say, as
Sure,
Sherlock Holmes.
yeah. I mean, I
you
think,
have to at least know everything he knows.
Sure, I think the same can be said about writing a Sherlock Holmes story.
Which is why this movie has some problems.
Right, exactly. And I was saying that I do think it's a kind of an excellent little adventure film for children. However, I think it's kind of a terrible Sherlock Holmes story. Disclaimers aside, it's fine that they give us a disclaimer, and I don't care one way or another that it's they're using these characters from beloved literature. Or whatever.
Okay, I won't say I love it. I generally like it when people go as far as to love a great literary work so much that they turn it into something modern that modern audiences can. That's more palatable for modern audiences.
At worst, that can feel like fan fiction.
Yes, at worst when it's done poorly.
But at best, it can be as welcome as anything that's actually canonized. It can be canonized,
right? And
it
can put new fire into it. Make people go back to it. I'm sure that after this movie came out, there was a revival of his works. There must have been like reprintings of his books and stuff because people cared again. Mm-hmm. They remembered and they cared. Oh, yeah, we loved those stories.
Yeah, and I guess part of the reason why I think it's kind of a terrible Sherlock Holmes story is that it's not smart enough to be a Sherlock Holmes story. And also there are some little narrative things that kind of irk me. We heard at the beginning of the movie, or as soon as we see Watson, there's some narration of Watson clearly as an adult, recounting this story from his childhood, when he first meets Sherlock Holmes and goes on this little adventure of a lifetime, as they keep calling it. I think the tagline of the movie is, before they shared a lifetime of adventure, they had an adventure of a lifetime, or something like that.
Oh, that's
kind of,
okay.
I don't know. But, that establishes, or it should establish that the movie takes place from Watson's perspective, and very soon we will see that that actually is not the case. This is, as it should be, Sherlock Holmes' story. It's his movie, and he strikes off on his own, and he's got many scenes by himself where Watson has no perspective on the scene, and it really is told kind of through the eyes of Sherlock Holmes. But then the narration keeps popping back up and doing weird things and trying to trick us into thinking that it's Watson's story when it's not. And we'll see that.
In the books, almost all of the books are first person from Watson.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Here's an admission: I've never
read any?
Never read
not even
any.
Hound.
No, not even.
Oh my
Hounds.
gosh, I thought that was.
I thought
that was required.
Is it Hound or Hounds? It's the Hounds.
The Hounds
of Baskerville. Yeah.
Nope. I thought that was required.
I'm a bad geek. I'm a really bad geek.
It's Hound.
The professor of this science class, I hate his performance. I hate it right here. It is so put on. It's terrible. Just the way he stumbles over his lines and tries to, I'm an old man. Look how I talk. It's really, really put on. And I'm not a big fan of it. But you do like Watson quite a bit, and I would say that Watson is probably, for me, he's probably the star performance in the entire movie.
Watson, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, what
Not to say that Nicholas Rowe doesn't do a great job as Sherlock Holmes. He's excellent.
I think he does too. And I will say this though. Now, generally, I'm really against this kind of character. But don't you think he's like the foundation, maybe, at least in part, of the unattractive but attractive?
Unconventionally attractive,
right? Like the Doctor Who guy who all the girls were freaking out over in the last season.
Was it Matt Smith? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think he definitely fits the Cumberbatch mold.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. Those guys that are kind of like
Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Alan Rickman as Snape.
I think he was an early incarnation of that. Because he's got like the long nose, which isn't that great looking, but somehow he kind of fits in his face. And in the end, when you've got like such a intelligent personality behind it, then you don't really care that much. And yeah, I think he definitely was there, and maybe as a child I was before I was an adult, and I was sort of watching this happen and kind of disliking it for the fans instead of for what it was.
Right.
I think as a child I was sold on it. I loved him.
So they try to establish this little love triangle between Sherlock Holmes.
Oh yeah, here's Malfoy.
You're jumping the gun a little bit, but we will get to that. I feel like this little romance is kind of shoehorned in. You said that you don't like this actress or you don't like this female character as much as you did when you were a child.
How old is she supposed to be?
Oh, good God, I don't know.
She's got like a bow in her hair, like this dumb little blue bow in her hair, and that's like the whole
16 or something, probably.
I mean, for me, it just kind of ties together my whole opinion of her, which is just that she's just this dumb little girl. Like, she doesn't do anything.
And the movie gives her nothing to do. Nothing to do.
And the only time she goes to do anything whatsoever, even when he's later in the movie, he's going to be staying with her in her uncle's apartment.
Yes.
And he's going to be staying with her there. And when he's in there, he says something like, I'm going to be needing food and supplies, or Watson says that. And then they both look at Watson like, well, I guess you'll have to be getting those. And I'm like, but what are you doing? Like, why couldn't she go out and get food and supplies? Like, it wouldn't be suspicious for her to be going in and out of the apartment. But when they finally do give her something to do, the one time she has to go collect stuff and salvage stuff from her uncle's apartment, she gets kidnapped.
Yep.
Of course.
They give her nothing to do except get kidnapped and have to be rescued.
And die.
And die, of course.
Get kidnapped and die.
And I guess make Sherlock into like the cold, calculating.
Oh, this would definitely be a no character for who's the girl who you watch her videos all the time, and she's really the feminist game critique right now.
Oh, Anita Sarkeesian.
Right.
Yeah.
She's awesome, and she I bet would have a lot of problems with this character.
Oh, of course she would.
Well, of course she would, but specifically because we're basing the whole foundation for our hero's motivations and personality on the death of a woman.
Yeah.
And which is something she complains about, rightfully so, in a lot of video games.
I believe that trope is called the woman in the fridge trope or something like that. Yeah.
Where all of the motivations of our hero are, the foundation of them, the core, comes from a woman dying.
Right. Exactly. And a part of me, I guess a more cynical part of me, feels like maybe the love interest is shoehorned into this movie to mitigate kind of the latent homoeroticism of a Sherlock Holmes and Watson story.
Oh, okay.
Of course, the new BBC TV, well, we say new, it's a few years old now, but the new BBC TV show Sherlock kind of revels in that.
Yeah. They just love it.
To great effect, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's really great. But I don't know. It's I guess when you have a story about two young men going on an adventure together, there's always going to be some.
So I was going to save this for later, but because it's so perfect to talk about right now, then I will. But so you know how she dies in this movie. She dies from a bullet wound.
Yes.
Right. And that the bullet wound scene is very similar to a scene from one of the later short stories in the Holmes series, The Adventures of the Three Garridebs, I want to say. I haven't read the short stories. I've only read a couple of the books.
Okay.
But anyways, so in that scene, Watson, in the short story, Watson gets shot. And there's this moment, and it must be in the BBC TV show, the scene where doesn't something... No. Watson's got like a bomb strapped to him or something like that. Remember?
Oh, yes.
With Moriarty.
I think it's the last scene of the first season.
And there's this really like moving moment between the two of them.
By the pool, moving, sexually charged even.
Right. And then like at the end of it, like Holmes is really, really shook up and he's affected by it. Yeah. Right. It's this great moment. And I think that, and also, which is my tie-in here, her death is a tie-in to this scene from the short stories where Watson gets shot with a gun. And so Watson's narration in this passage is, "It was worth a wound. It was worth many wounds to know the depth of loyalty and love which lay beyond that cold mask. The clear, hard eyes were dimmed for a moment, and the firm lips were shaking. For the one and only time I caught a glimpse of a great heart as well as a great brain. All my years of humble but single-minded service culminated in that moment of revelation."
Oh my God!
Right? So if
are you sure that's not fan fiction?
No.
Okay.
so.
Not to insult, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's works like that, but
no, it's awesome.
Yeah,
right. I
no,
get what you're saying about fan fiction.
I don't mean it. It's a great passage, but yeah.
Yes. But anyways, though, I mean that scene has to be lifted directly for this movie. right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
got to be the moment that, because Watson even says it's only the second time in his life he's seen Holmes cry.
Yeah.
Is when she dies.
Yes.
And it's this moment where that cold, calculating guy kind of breaks. And so definitely it's taken from the moment where that happens in the canon, in the stories where that happens. But that's between Holmes and Watson. And here it's between Holmes and a woman, so that we don't have to deal with the gay
I don't
issues.
know all that much about Sherlock Holmes lore. I don't know all that much. You were talking about canon. I don't know all that much about Sherlock Holmes. But I want, like, I know the big things, and when I see him in this movie, I'm like, oh, okay, he says, "Elementary, my dear." I guess the character of Rupert, Elizabeth's older uncle, who's living at the school, and he makes this flying machine that he's always like tinkering with and toying with. He says at one point, "Elementary, my dear Holmes," because he's talking to Sherlock Holmes, and of course everyone knows that that's a famous line from the books. He says, "Elementary, my dear Watson," and all that kind of stuff. I get the really big stuff. I don't know how much more there is in this movie that, like, diehard fans would be like, "Oh, that's great. That's right out of this story," or whatever. Like, is Sherlock Holmes like a fencing master in the series?
I don't know that. I don't know about fencing.
Was he an apprentice of someone named Rupert Waxflatter? Like, is that something from the books? I don't know how much of this story is kind of lifted out of the Sherlock Holmes canon.
Like I said, well, there are only 4 novels in by Doyle himself.
Right.
Of course, there's like a young Sherlock Holmes series and stuff like that.
Study in Scarlet, Hounds of Baskerville.
I don't know the other
8.5% Solution, maybe. I can't remember.
I've read Hound of Baskerville, and
7.5% Solution, I think, actually.
Scarlet. But anyways, though, I'm not like a huge. I haven't read a lot of Sherlock Holmes stuff. It's one of the series of works that I would like to get deeper into because I love Holmes. But I haven't read any of the short stories, and I've lost my train of thought.
I forgot what you were talking about too.
Thanks.
This is good a time any two, because we missed the scene and I wanted to say something about it. This is the best time to talk about the fact that this is, to me, undoubtedly like proto Harry Potter.
Absolutely, but the first moment when we see Watson, I got that feeling this time.
Yeah, you said it way earlier than I got the feeling, and it kind of surprised me that you said it at all. But when I really got the feeling at first was in the mess hall scene when they're in the cafeteria area or the dining hall, and it looks just like Hogwarts
with the candlelight and everything, and the professors all lined up at the front.
Exactly, like the lighting and the staging and the way everything is set in that scene, the mise en scène, if I can be really snooty about it, is very much like Harry Potter. And I think that the similarities are not just that superficial. I really feel like this feels in a lot of ways like Harry Potter before Harry Potter was a thing. So much so that if you're like a diehard Harry Potter fan and you're really sad that there are no more books and no more movies or anything,
you should probably go and watch this.
Please watch this movie because it really kind of captures that same kind of magic.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
really does.
My first instinct when... of course, when I was a kid, there was no Harry Potter.
Yes.
So when I was watching this,
you said something about it earlier. You said Malfoy.
You
hinted at it.
We've got Malfoy, and then they're going to, I guess, I don't know what the crazy professor would be, Hagrid's house or something to go hang out, right?
Sure, it's like Hagrid's house, and then there's
there are 3 of them. We've got
the professor,
a girl and 2 boys.
Yeah, exactly. You've got professors whose motivations seem like they are against the main characters, but they're actually for the main characters, and then vice versa. And
right.
That dichotomy between like school life and the adventure is very much like how the Harry Potter stories are.
However, though, even though I immediately got the same feeling, it's also the music. It's the music for one thing. It's the setting, like the location specifically, that we're somewhere, in England?
And it's
somewhere.
winter and it's snowing.
Winter, right. So the music and all of that gives it that feeling. That's what immediately triggered it for me. I backed up a little bit because... Oh, go ahead and talk about it. I know you want to.
Okay, so we're in probably the most famous scene in this entire movie, and it's the stained glass night scene. So this creature or this character of the stained glass knight who scares the priest out of the chapel and into the road where he gets run over by this cart. It is the most famous scene in the movie because it was the very first creature created 100% with CGI, and it. It was created by Industrial Light and Magic, specifically by a very small studio at the time by the name of Pixar.
Ah, interesting.
John Lasseter himself worked on that the stained glass knight creature, and it took them 4 months to do that. And the scene itself, like the scene that contains
5
the
seconds?
CGI, seconds, less than a minute, 4 months to create that effect. And I'm gonna say it still kind of holds up.
It's not horrible.
It's not
I mean,
horrible.
there's worse still being shown on like Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh yeah. There's worse
That's
CG
being made today.
I think it looks fine. I really do. So that's really a testament to hard work and early CGI effects.
And this movie is still using a lot of more practical effects too. With some of the creatures, and they use some stop motion and stuff later with the pastries coming to life. And anyways, okay, so Harry Potter. I step back a little bit from the theory that this is like, dare we say, J.K. Rowling maybe saw this movie, right?
Yeah, right.
Like dare we go there and make a suggestion like that? However, though, if you just type it into the internet, it's all over the place.
Really?
There are articles out there all over the place
about how this is like. Oh,
like
I didn't realize
tearing
that.
it apart, like piece, and of course, conspiracy theorists, right? Some of the conspiracy stuff I found was like Hermione, Harry, and Weasley for Ron.
Yeah.
Holmes, Hardy is Elizabeth's last name, and Watson, HHW.
Oh my God.
Okay, so like they tear it apart even that much.
You're right. It is kind of conspiracy theory level.
a little silly, But anyways, though, it's all over the internet, so it's not just us who has this idea.
Right.
But I backed away from it initially because of the same reason why American audiences I'm going to say it, over freaked out about Harry Potter as a series, as a book series.
Sure.
Part of the reason that happened in the States and didn't happen so much abroad is because we don't go to boarding school.
Right.
And so to us,
there is kind of a romanticized feeling to it.
It makes us, we're like, oh my God, they get to live together at school and they go on adventures and their mommies and daddies aren't there to watch them. And and so like for American kids, it was this whole new concept and it was really cool. And I think one of the major tie-ins to this movie and Harry Potter just is that it's at boarding school. And so you immediately get that feeling because maybe that's what halls always look like in boarding school. I didn't go, so I don't know. But
exactly.
Maybe they're always lined up with the tables like that and the professors up front.
I don't know. Some of the stuff seems like Watson wears that scarf through this entire movie, and like with his haircut and even the way his face looks and the round glasses, Watson
true.
really
But again,
looks like Harry Potter.
The outfit is probably reminiscent of a typical boarding school
Exactly,
outfit, which is
exactly.
why the Harry Potter outfits look like they do, is because they're reminiscent of a typical boarding
any
school
English
outfit.
people listening to this are probably saying, "You dumb Americans." That's
Right.
That's just how
it's
boarding
just
school
how
is.
boarding
Yeah.
school looks, and because both of them are set in boarding school, to us as Americans, we take that distinction and we're like, oh my God, they're the same thing, but they're actually just it's like if, someone who didn't come from a country where public high school, the way we see it in America, was a normal thing, and they saw 2 TV shows that were both set in a public high school, and they were like, oh my God, look at all these parallels. And you're like, no, they just all have lockers that are hard to open. And
so all of this about like how Holmes deduces things in this movie, I'm not a huge fan of. I think the best it got was our first meeting, our initial meeting with Watson and Holmes, where he, gives him all this information about himself, and Watson says, well, what is it, some kind of magic trick? How did you do that? And he says, oh, well, I deduced from this that this means this and this, that, and this and whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, that's great, that's cool. That's what I like to see Sherlock Holmes
there's
do.
a name for it.
What is it?
Holmesian deduction.
Holmesian deduction. Okay, so
deductive reasoning.
Right,
but,
deductive reasoning and Holmesian deduction, like in that specific way that he does it and no one else can. I don't think it gets better than that in the rest of the movie. In fact, this whole little thing that he's just done
with the trophy,
where he challenges, what's his name, Dudley
Malfoy.
He's
even got the hair. I mean, there are so many parallels.
Isn't Harry Potter's cousin named Dudley?
Ah, yes. Right?
And he's also sort of a villain, like in a way. But yeah, like the him doing that whole thing, and we get like a montage of him running around the school and finding these clues and doing all this kind of stuff. You can't really follow it as an audience member. You just watch him do stuff, and then you see him right now explain it to Watson, like
explain how elementary it is.
What in fact he did, which if you really think about like what Dudley had to do or what he's implying he had to do to set up the deductive reasoning game.
Make a pot?
Yeah, like he had to make a replica of an antique pot and put the statue inside it. Why didn't he just put the statue inside the real pot? Like, why did he have to make a replica pot so that
maybe it wasn't going to fit in that pot,
so that Holmes could break it? But the professor comes in and recognizes the pot and says, "No, it's an antique."
Right, but it's not. It's a
replica.
Right. So what I'm saying is the trophy couldn't fit inside the pot. So there's no way he could have put the trophy in the pot. Make it around the trophy. But that means he baked the trophy, right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Anyways, trophy and Goblet of Fire.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
It just goes on and on. It's endless. But however, though, one of the major complaints to that is like, so we've got our three main characters. I guess Hermione is Sherlock.
Well, this as the more intelligent
it's definitely not Elizabeth.
Oh, she's nothing. Like it's like some of the comparisons to Harry Potter are pretty superficial, and then there's two boys and a girl. But I don't know. Like their personalities seem to be kind of split, and like there are elements of those
elements of the characters, and because the one who looks the most like Harry is Watson, but he's not the leader. You know, he's not the most important member. So they try to establish this. We're seeing Lestrade, a detective at the local police department. We're seeing that there is some strife between Holmes and Lestrade because it's clear that Holmes is always going to Lestrade and telling him, "Oh, you need to be looking at this case. You need to, I think that there's something going on, something suspicious." And Lestrade is like, "I've heard enough from you, Holmes. You're always doing this. Let the police do their jobs. You don't have to act like a police or a detective or anything like that." And this is a character that's from canon, too.
I was about to ask that because this feels like it has history. Like the way the scene, the scene starts and you feel the tension immediately, and you don't know who this character is if you don't know Sherlock Holmes lore. And I didn't know anything about this character, but I felt like, wow, this character feels like already drawn. Like this relationship already exists.
Like a lot of the stuff in this story, I don't think there's any reference that would let us know that, Holmes was bugging him when he was a kid.
No.
But yeah, in the stories and stuff, Doyle mentions this character a lot. I guess he has to deal with him sometimes, and maybe makes his job more difficult.
Do they have like a rivalry or something like that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't remember.
Is he like head of
specifically.
Scotland Yard or something like that?
I think he worked for Scotland Yard, but I don't think he does in the story. I don't remember.
That's interesting. But that kind of stood out to me as someone who doesn't know Sherlock Holmes lore enough to know who Lestrade would be at all, or to even know if he's a character, a canonical character.
I just remember that he was someone from the story.
Yeah, the relationship feels like it already has history, and I think that's really interesting. And
there's a lot of that. They go back and I think they some of it's kind of fun where they give us reasons for why like the particular points of his outfit came to be. Like his hat came from what's his name, the crazy guy, Wax
Flatter.
Wax Flatter.
Yeah.
They sure do have Harry Potter names, right? Dibs and Wax Flatter and.
I think it might just be. I think it might actually just be. I don't know. Maybe just making fun of British names.
Okay.
Or like Anglo names. I think Anglo names are easy to make fun of, especially when you've still got people coming to prominence like Benedict Cumberbatch. Like that's such an easy name to make fun of. Like with all due respect to him, he's a fine actor, and I enjoy watching him work and all that kind of stuff. But it's like
the most British name that ever.
Exactly. British. So when you see like stories about stuffy old British people, of course they're going to have names like Penderflabble, stuff like that. So the fencing professor here, we don't actually hear his name until over halfway through the movie, which I think is both a good and a bad thing. Did you notice that we don't actually hear his name? His name in the movie is Professor Wraith, or his fake name, I guess. And we don't hear it until over halfway through the movie, I think for a very pragmatic reason, in that there's this really stupid element to the script where one of the characters' last words before he dies is Atar, and Atar, written backwards, is Wraith. So this guy chose...
You know what that's kind of like? That's kind of like Lord Voldemort and
God.
Tom
Oh,
Marvolo Riddle mixing up the letters and getting a new name.
Wow. You're kind of convincing me here.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of it. There is a lot of it. Again, I really do think the main
I didn't realize that was a thing. I guess you went online and looked at all
No,
that
I
stuff.
was thinking it. That was the first thing that popped in my head when they said the backwards name. I was like, oh, didn't they do that with that thing in the book where they mixed up the letters? Also, when I looked up online, the thing people talk about is the direct relation to a backwards name, the mirror of, what is it, Erised or something?
I don't know.
It's desire spelled backwards,
Yeah.
the one that they look at and they can see what they want. But the one I thought of was Lord Voldemort, and the name, being mixed up and it's spelling out Lord Voldemort. Tom Riddle.
That's pretty funny.
Anyways, yeah.
This is kind of the perfect movie to usher in our month of Christmas movies, which is starting
Right,
next
it
month.
is, isn't it? It's kind of an almost Christmas movie.
Almost a Christmas movie. The movie ends on Christmas Day, because they say Merry Christmas to each other, and it's at the very end of the movie. We never see anything that's specifically Christmassy other than snowy streets and stuff like that. But I like this little thing that he's done to Dudley here, where he's changed his appearance with some kind of potion in his tea or something like that.
Oh,
My
whatever.
God. I shouldn't have said potion. But as long as we're going the Harry Potter route, he kind of changes the de facto Malfoy character into a fair-skinned, light-haired, platinum-haired individual.
Well, he already has blonde hair, and it's kind of slicked back. He already pulls it off.
Kind of looks like
Right?
Malfoy, and he is kind of that character in this movie. One thing I don't like about this movie is that I think the villains, like how they go about their big evil scheme, is really stupid.
Yeah.
They
It is.
shoot people with blowguns that have poisonous thorns that cause them to hallucinate and then maybe kill themselves. Like, it's successful when it's convenient for it to be successful in the narrative, but of course when Sherlock Holmes and his friends start hallucinating, they don't end up killing themselves.
Well, and the thing is too, like, sometimes when they choose to do it is really dumb. Like when they're with who's the last guy that they see?
What's his name? Cratchit or something?
Cratwitch or
Cragwitch?
something like that.
Flundlebuckles.
So they're with him though, and it's after the scene where they were with Wraith and his who turns out to be his sister, the servant woman, Miss
Right.
Dibbs or whatever her name is, Mrs. Dribble or Dib or Bibble or whatever.
All that's super predictable though, because once they establish that, once they tell the backstory of the 6 guys who went to the same university and they're all being killed off by this. What's the name of it? What's the name of the group?
Ramatep.
Ramatep.
Or something.
They're all being killed off by this Ramatep group, which has been organized by this guy named Atar, who was an Anglo-Egyptian whose Egyptian village was burned down
While he and his sister were there, and then they blamed it on the...
It's a little convoluted.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened. When I was a kid, I was always like, oh, this is the part where the music gets crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
I don't know what's going on.
There's this whole convoluted backstory about these British businessmen who want to build a resort hotel in Egypt, and while they're there, they find this underground pyramid that has
some princesses,
the bodies of 5 princesses, and they steal the princesses and all the treasures, and then the locals get really upset and they fight back, and then
the village gets burned.
The British Empire, I guess, the military gets involved, and they come in, and this village gets burned, and this kid named Atar and his little sister who are Anglo-Egyptian, and they were in London at the time, or they were in England at the time of their village being burned, and their parents got killed, and everyone they know gets killed. Atar writes a letter to these 6 businessmen who built a hotel and kind of started this whole thing. He holds them responsible and says that when he comes of age, he's going to claim his revenge on them, and they're going to replace the 5 bodies of the princesses, which is a really convoluted way to make this story work at all. You know?
Yeah, it's really... and I have other issues with it that I'll get to when we're there. But one of my things with the dart gun is, like, later we see, because Watson and Holmes and Elizabeth all get shot with it. And so they have the little thorns, and they bring them to Lestrade, the inspector.
Right.
And they show it to him.
And this is where Rupert says Atar
this is before
he dies.
he's an inspector. He's not Inspector Lestrade yet, but
right. He's just a detective.
Yeah,
Detective Lestrade. Yeah.
But so they bring him because Holmes makes a little jibe at him, like trying to get his ambition up to try and make him follow the case, and he's like, this could be the thing that makes you an inspector.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, so he brings in the little thorns, and they're not that little. They're pretty big.
Yeah.
And every time somebody gets shot with them, they immediately reach up and touch that spot. But no one ever pulls out a thorn and is like, huh.
I go, holy shit.
Weird.
I just got
this
shot.
Is really long.
Yeah.
So that always was kind of, and like, when it happens to Holmes and stuff, he doesn't even, because it happens to him and he reaches up and, like, you hear the little noise, but he's not like, oh shit, I've been snapped by it and I'm gonna get drug crazy. Like, he just everybody's like, oh my gosh, mosquito.
Ouch, the mosquito bite. Don't you think it's kind of fucked up that when Rupert dies, Holmes can't go to the funeral because he was expelled from the school?
Yeah. What's up with that?
What's that about? That's really shitty. But yeah, we're seeing this mystery character running around who ends up just being one of the 6 businessmen, of course, one of which was Rupert. Everyone who dies
This one's like Cragwitch or
This is
whatever.
Cragwitch, yeah. And he doesn't die either. His scene kind of ends abruptly before we see what his fate is. But as he's hallucinating, the kids kind of hold him down, and then Lestrade shows up. But that doesn't happen until later. Yeah, the whole hallucinating and committing suicide really just happens at the narrative's convenience.
Well, right. Like I was saying, I mean, the woman goes in and chooses to shoot Cragwitch with the little thorn while Holmes and Watson are right there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not going to shoot all of them, it's not going to do any good because they're just going to hold him down and stop him.
It's really strange. Who, I guess...
But he attempts to run out the window like everybody else. Everybody's
reaction
reaction
is
to jump out windows.
Who the cloaked figure is?
It's the sister.
It's the sister? Oh, okay.
But I don't remember how we find that out. But it is
I can't
the
remember
sister.
how we find that out either. But yeah, I guess she becomes Atar's number 1 assassin, or her brother's number 1 assassin. And then she dies horribly. How
does she die?
Gets set on fire.
Oh, yeah.
When Holmes takes the blowgun, like as she's like trying to shoot him with the blowgun, he blows into the other side and shoots it into the back of her throat.
Oh.
And then she stumbles into some fire, gets ignited, and runs away.
That's terrible.
I'm just going to say, on this adventure of the lifetime that these kids have, they kill a lot of people. I mean, they just flat murder some motherfuckers.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Did the Harry Potter kids ever actually murder anybody? Of course, at the end, Harry ends up killing Voldemort.
Yeah, they're in like a war, and they're...
Yeah, but that's a different thing. I know some of the kids die, and some professors die at the end of those books.
I don't remember. I don't think so.
I
mean,
think
maybe people like accidentally die.
Well, that's
due
what
to,
I mean. Like
circumstance.
incidentally, like they find the rebuilt pyramid that's underneath. I don't even know, like, location wise, it's kind of strange, but they find a pyramid in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where is that pyramid exactly?
I don't know, but
it looks like it's out in the street,
just tall enough that the top has to peek through the floorboards of a shop.
Right. So, like, they go up into the attic of a shop, and then below that, they see, like, the top of the pyramid, and they fall through the floor, and it's like, it's kind of in a back alley, but how can you even hide that? In London, no less. It's huge. Like, it's a huge pyramid.
Yeah. I don't know.
But they bring that thing down. Like, the whole thing collapses, and, like, incidentally, a lot of people die in this movie. I don't know. Did that ever happen in the Harry Potter stories?
Not that I recall. I mean, at least not quite.
Certainly no one was ever shot with a gun and died.
In the back of their throat. Oh wait,
yeah, I was talking about Elizabeth, but
the-
yes,
the
that
actual
also
gun
that yeah.
too.
Also, no fetuses under the train station benches. Do you remember that
What?
weird train station fetus Voldemort under the bench in one of the last movies, where he's in like the dream train station? We're talking about fucking Harry Potter now.
Yes,
Why don't
I
we just do
remember.
Harry Potter for popcorn poops?
Yeah, we will at some point. I mean, they're fun movies.
So we see Sherlock Holmes here gets his iconic hat. He doesn't actually wear it until the very, very end of the movie, and kind of collects all of the pieces of what
I love the
makes
way
him
Watson
iconic.
says that, like the way he delivers some of these lines. No, take it off. It's very silly. Like some of the stuff he says. I really think, because this is a kid here. He's not that old. The actor who's playing him, right? Mm-hmm. He can't be that old, and I think he does a fantastic job with it. I think he pulls it off really well. He pulls off Watson really well.
This whole thing happens a couple of times throughout the story, and that is that the narration crops up and tells us something that's happening on screen that we can see happening, but even worse, it explains to us what people are talking about in the scene instead of just letting the characters tell us by talking to each other about it.
Yep.
It's like they'll start explaining something and having a conversation, and then Watson's voice will crop in and be like, and this is what we said during this conversation.
Yep. Like the point where they were doing research, and then Holmes, he's like, listen to this, and then the narration starts up, and it's like, Holmes told me that, and I'm like, what?
It's like, why
didn't you just let him talk, man? God, we were right there. Was it really such bad dialogue that you had to talk over it?
I don't know. I don't think the dialogue writing in this movie is all that
I don't
bad.
think so either.
It just seems really strange. I know that
Here's the wand maker in Diagon Alley.
for real. Is this you or is this
No,
the
this is
internet?
me.
This is
yeah,
you?
it's just me. I'm just fucking around.
But I don't know. It's kind of valid.
Oh no! One thing I did read online: the serpents in the two intertwined serpents that Wraith used to write his letter, the symbol on.
Oh
it,
yeah, the symbol
Slytherin.
of. Oh my god!
Right.
That's unbelievable.
Right.
Like, now that you've told me that this is a thing on the internet,
mean, look at those
I didn't even
scarves.
know that. Right. Like, now that you've told me that this is a thing on the internet that people talk about,
It's
I
at
didn't
least
know
a thing
that.
from
Like,
I found at least one article, and my apologies to the person because I didn't look up the name and write down the citation for it, but there was at least one decently a well-written article where they were breaking it down and writing a bunch of the conspiracy stuff that people have found.
well, this is
So it's something people talk about.
I guess we're not quite halfway through the movie, but we're almost there. And I would say that it's probably a good time to stop talking about Harry Potter, because I think that it very distinctly switches from being a Harry Potter movie to being a young Indiana Jones movie.
Yes, it does. Temple of Doom came out in 1984,
Oh, did it?
right before this movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty transparent.
Yeah, it's really transparent, actually.
Which I don't. Okay, I have to say,
I've never watched any of the Young Indiana Jones TV show. Have you? Have you ever seen any of the TV show?
no, I haven't. Have you?
No.
No, you haven't. Aren't there books too?
Yeah, but
Like young adult books?
yeah, I think so. But I think I mean, maybe they came after the TV show.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know that well.
Yeah, but I think that this very much becomes kind of young Indiana Jones and the Pyramid of Doom. Actually, I think that was a subtitle for this movie in some international markets, was young
Pyramid of Fear.
Pyramid of Fear. Mm-hmm. Young Sherlock Holmes and the Pyramid of Fear. That's an Indiana Jones title.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And I mean, Pyramid of Fear isn't really that different from Temple of Doom. So
Yeah, exactly. This is, like I said before, this isn't a very good Sherlock Holmes story, because primarily Sherlock Holmes his logic is kind of flawed and weird, and he's not a very smart character in this movie if you really think about the decisions he makes and some of the deductive reasoning.
That's absolutely true. Some of the stuff he does, like he has a lot of specific information about things. Like at one point he's talking about the weft of certain threads, which is it has to do with like how it's woven and stuff,
Yeah.
and how only this type of material could only come from Froggatt and Froggatt, and that's how they got to that shop. But anyways, like
the narration is doing it again. Holmes went on to explain that blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Yeah, this was the scene I was talking about specifically. Like he has really specific information like that. Like he points at Watson. He's like, those boots can only be, I've only seen those up in the north where they're made and what, blah, blah,
Sure.
blah. So you're from the north. But he isn't particularly smart. I mean, the first time they go into the pyramid and they see the girl all wrapped up, he runs out and screams, she's alive! Like, and then of course they chase them trying to kill them.
Right.
Like, what did he think was going to happen?
I feel like the story tries to fix all that by telling us early on that Holmes' one big flaw is that he's emotional, so that
Okay.
so that when things happen, and Watson even brings it up later when Holmes gets really upset that he can't think of anything, Watson says, you're flustered. You can't think of anything because you're flustered. And Holmes says, well, you think of something. He says, I'm flustered too. I can't think of anything. I'm upset. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So they establish that Sherlock Holmes is his one weakness in this movie is that he gets emotional sometimes. I don't know
and that after he deals with the death of his true love, that
right when he goes through like the most harrowing thing that could
he's
happen.
going to become completely cold and calculating.
Exactly.
Even I forget who it was. Maybe it was the director who made the comment where he was talking about he did this movie. Maybe it was the screenwriter. I don't know if it
Chris
was Columbus
who
go ahead.
Who directed the first two Harry Potter movies.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so I don't know if it was him or if it was Levinson. Maybe it was Levinson who said that basically this movie came out of a desire to describe why Holmes became that cold, calculating guy.
Yeah.
And they gave a reason for it, and
I mean, and
it's
that's
this
fine.
love
Like,
interest.
I don't think that that's a problem. That his weakness of being emotional sometimes is like his personal conflict, and it keeps him from being the smartest character he can be. But when he is being smart, like when he should be able to reason things out, I feel smarter than him. Like, I know that this is young Sherlock Holmes, and I know he's still a kid, but
I would expect young Sherlock Holmes to be way smarter than adult Jessica.
Exactly. That's how I feel about Sherlock Holmes as a character, is that I think that even as a child, he should be more clever than I am and be able to reason better than I do. But like, I mean, and this is the fault of the writing, but the fact that, like I said, Professor Wraith chose the name Wraith, and it's just his real name backwards. And
Moriarty wouldn't do that. Moriarty's too smart
exactly.
for that.
And then at the end, we get a little stinger after the credits that lets us know that this guy Atar, who eventually became Wraith and threw away his old life, and once he gets discovered, running this Rametep thing, this Rametep cult, then he throws that life away and becomes who we know as Professor James Moriarty. That's what happens in the stinger. But Moriarty's smarter than that. He wouldn't be like, what's a good new name? Oh, my name backwards. After he sends a letter to the 6 people that he swears revenge against,
And this is
signed Atar.
right. And this is not child Moriarty. This is an adult Moriarty.
Yeah.
That unfortunately is one of the things about this movie that I'm not a fan of.
How would Holmes not get that right away? Like, he's got the information in front of him. He knows his Rupert's last words were Atar. He knows that, and he knows his professor's name.
Well, Watson makes a joke of it about at the end. Like you remember when Watson points at the door and he's like, "How did he miss the door?" Or maybe we're about to have that moment right now. Watson's about to walk by a door and he's gonna go, Holmes, there was a door. How did he miss the door? And it's this comment which is very true to the characters. I think that Watson
misses the obvious stuff.
is not as smart as Holmes, and
Right.
Holmes sometimes needs someone who is a few notches down so that he can see the obvious things. And of course they don't need the door. They wind up using the better way to get in.
Sure.
But Watson makes the comment at the end where he's like, it's just Atar spelled backwards. And Holmes is like, oh, I would have figured that out eventually.
Eventually I would have come
But
to that.
I'm sure that's commentary on Holmes misses some of the obvious things because he's too preoccupied dealing with his incredible genius brain. But that's not what I'm talking about right now. The thing that upsets me.
So is this now officially, since it's Temple of Doom now, is this now Indiana Jones Short Round and, what's her name? It's not Charlie. It's like a man's name from Temple of Doom. Kate Capshaw's character's name. I think it's Charlie or something like that. It's like a man's name. I can't remember.
I don't remember. It's been a while since.
But what were you saying?
I was saying about something else, and then you made me think
I'm
of Temple of Doom.
sorry. That's happened a couple times this episode already.
Thank you. I was trying to talk about Moriarty. What I was saying about Moriarty is that one of my big problems with this is that one of the things that's so fun about Holmes and Moriarty, the thing that is so fun about Holmes and Moriarty, and I think the BBC show captures this perfectly, is that they are essentially exactly the same, but for one small difference. And that one small difference is that Moriarty has no human connection. He has no humanity, essentially.
Right.
He doesn't care if the world burns.
Right.
Right?
Sure. He's the Joker.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He just is incredibly intelligent, and all he wants to do is just test that intelligence and see how far he can get. Whereas Holmes is not so. I mean, he's pretty much the same guy, except that Watson specifically pulls him back down to earth and makes him human. And Holmes is also obsessed with justice, with finding justice, as was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself. But because of that, it creates this incredible parallel between our villain and our hero, because we know they're equals.
Right.
And it's not about them being so different, but being so much alike that it's a game. It really is a game to them. And I don't feel that in this. Moriarty's just a bad guy. He's just a dick.
What does Sherlock Holmes steal off of this guy right here? I can't remember what comes of that. He just stole something off of one of the guards, and I can't remember what he does with it.
I don't know, but he's a really good pickpocket, huh?
Yeah, he's really, really great at that.
He's played a bunch of Assassin's Creed, I think.
So we're inside this pyramid, and we've got all of these people chanting, and I like the music in this scene, and it's very, very Temple of Doom, so insanely.
Oh God,
Temple
isn't
of
this
Doom.
awful with the
It is terrible.
boiling water, liquid stuff being poured on this girl?
This is and I guess much like Temple of Doom, it's really racist.
Yeah.
Like, I really kind of hate how, and this is people complain about Temple of Doom in the same way. Like, it really vilifies and cements the concept of the other or the scary foreigner. Like, and you know, they kind of fix it a little or try to mitigate it a bit by saying that they're religious zealots or extremists or whatever, and that's fine. But one of the bigger problems I have with this movie's cultural appropriation of, you know, Egyptian, I guess, imagery, or these people are supposed to be from Egypt, is that all of them are white. Like, you want to appropriate like what they do is they appropriate this culture, they appropriate ideas and imagery from this culture, but then everybody they cast in it is white because, you know, the character of Wraith is Anglo-Egyptian, and he kind of builds this cult from, you know,
well, they're in London
because people, right? Exactly, there are people in London. That's fine. But I don't know. That doesn't forgive it to me.
No, it drives me. Well, and it's not just that,
yeah.
But it drives me crazy because I am not able to suspend my disbelief far enough to believe that these people who are not Egyptian can be so devoted that they would kill people for this religion.
Exactly.
Like, and what do they say? They justify it later in the movie by saying something about the people who are in this cult, who are all white as hell.
Yeah.
They are the lost souls of the London streets, the poor and the homeless. Right. Okay, so we're supposed to believe that just because they're poor and homeless. Now, here's another problem. Because they're poor and homeless, that's reason enough to believe that they are dumb enough to fall into, because of course your, you know, financial status determines your intelligence and your gullibility. So they're dumb enough to fall into this cult. But I mean, like the way I'm talking about it is that's so frustrating. These people.
We've got zombies. We've got zombies.
We do have zombies. That's good. These people who are converted into this cultist religion. This is a religion that is in a language that presumably they would have to transliterate before they could even try and translate to read.
Sure.
I mean, the chanting that they're doing, the accent should be horrible.
I'm sorry. This puppet that's carving her tombstone is so the
Tales
Crypt Keeper.
From the Crypt.
It is so the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, like the chanting, right?
Yeah.
Their accent should be really bad because they're just bunch of. They don't speak Arabic. I mean, they don't.
Say what you will about Temple of Doom, and it is undoubtedly super, super racist. But at least they cast people of color, in that movie. Because, like in this movie, I mean, what I was getting at was that they appropriate the culture, but then they don't cast actual Egyptian people or people from the Middle East who are sorely misrepresented or under misrepresented in Hollywood movies already.
Yeah.
So you take the culture, but you don't give, people from that culture their due. Like, and I'm not trying to defend Temple of Doom at all. I'm not, because it is
kind of like when the Lord of the Rings just, goes as we've talked about before, where they just mess with size effects. Instead of hiring little people to play hobbits.
They use forced perspective instead of, hiring little people like they did. And we praised Willow for that. They hired a ton of little people to fill those roles. And it really adds to the verisimilitude of that movie. Like, it really helps it. I think it elevates it in a great way. And you represent little people who are, again, sorely underrepresented in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And this, I think it's just kind of unforgivable in this movie.
Oh, I love this scene. I remembered this from childhood.
All the little stop motion pastries and stuff.
Trying to stuff themselves into Watson's mouth.
We were talking before we started recording, and I think it's great that we do this because, we get some good characterization through these hallucinations, because it's obviously things that these characters fear.
Well, I mean, you have to. If you're giving one show for each of these characters of what do they see when they're drugged, and it's a drug that affects them in a fear way, that it's affecting what they're
exactly.
Like, it's characterization. It's pure characterization.
For Watson, we saw that he kind of has a problem with overeating, and we've kind of said something earlier in the story where Holmes mentions the fact that he loves custard tarts.
I think they kind of rag on him a little too much, though. Even some of the professors make some little comments
they
about
rag
him
on
being
him.
pudgy.
And there's some fat shaming and stuff going on, which
it's not
I
cool.
don't like. But the fact that it's part of his psychology, I think, is illustrated well in that scene. However, as I understand it in the books, Holmes is the one that has a quote, and I'm using air quotes, quote unquote, substance abuse, if we'll call it that problem. And I think that or another kind of sneaky way to, sneak that into Holmes's character could have been interesting, but they give it to Watson instead.
And what we get from Holmes, which we just
It's
saw.
actually pretty great, I think. But
go ahead.
So what we see from Holmes, his hallucination is that I don't know if this is in the books either, but it's clear that his father was having an affair, and Holmes, as a very young man, used deductive reasoning to discover that his father was having an affair and basically ruined his parents' relationship, ruined their marriage. And his father blames him, and it's obvious that Holmes kind of blames himself for using his gift, his intelligence and his talent for reasoning to basically break up his family.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of brilliant. I love that.
It is.
I don't know that it's in.
I don't know.
books,
I didn't look it up, and it's not anything that I've read before, so I don't know. And I loved the set they used too. It was really like a very dramatic, as in
atmospheric,
theatrical, like theater, real theater, simplistic set. Mm-hmm. But like with cobwebs and stuff on the people to show you it's from the past. It was really cool. It was a nice. Now, however, though, we got characterization from those two, and what do we get from Elizabeth? What is she afraid of?
Dying. And okay, it's foreshadowing. That's fine. It is foreshadowing, so it does have kind of a place in the narrative in a way, but it's also kind of shitty because the other two characters get really interesting things, like interesting, I guess, touchstones for their individual psyches and what they're going through mentally and where they come from mentally. But hers is just like everybody's afraid of death.
Right. Yeah, it's nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah.
But besides the foreshadowing,
but we do get zombies.
Nothing. We do get zombies.
This is another little plot hole right here. Lestrade still won't start this investigation, despite the fact that he walked in and said that the groundskeeper of the graveyard is going to drop the charges for them breaking into the graveyard when he caught Holmes fighting a crazy
and couldn't they
guy?
show them the temple underneath the warehouse?
They
and be
could,
like,
well, if they refuse to go look, that's one thing. But it's clear that Lestrade just talked to the groundskeeper, who more than likely would have told him, yeah, there was this crazy bald guy with a sword, and he was fighting this kid, and the kid was obviously defending himself, but I shot my gun at him, and, I want to press charges, and they had to convince him otherwise. Is that not enough to be like, okay, crazy bald guy with a sword, maybe there's something to this?
Yeah. That sounds like not normal.
Yeah. This, we missed it, but just a second ago was the very quick shot that was our hint for this week, and I guess it was too tough because nobody got it.
Which one was it?
It was the shot when Holmes dumps out the thorns onto Lestrade's desk. It's that shot right there.
Okay.
But yeah, unfortunately, nobody got it. I guess I'll try to make them easier. Although someone got next week's, and we'll mention what movie that is at the end of this episode.
We did. Also, when they got picked up by the police, we got some exposition there that felt kind of random, where they mentioned the 4 young girls who mysteriously disappeared last month, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, I guess that ties into the princesses.
Who said that?
It was Holmes, I think.
Okay, did he say it to Lestrade?
Yeah.
Okay, and that was another thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit, is that we hear a whole bunch about the 4 guys dying, like them, because Atar is getting his revenge on these guys, and the way he's doing that is by shooting them with these thorns and making them hallucinate and killing them, although it doesn't actually kill everyone that it hallucinates, but we've said that. We've already gone over that in detail. So it's kind of a stupid way to kill the people that you're trying to kill, because maybe it won't actually kill them. Whatever. We hear about those guys disappearing and dying all over the place, but then we find out that they've also kidnapped and killed these girls, and we don't hear anything about that.
Yeah, no, we just got the briefest mention of it just a second ago in that police station.
I feel like
that office.
The story, the way the story is written, it missed a really obvious opportunity for Atar's brilliant plan to be getting revenge on the 6 businessmen, or it couldn't have been, it may have just been 5.
By taking their daughters or something?
By taking their daughters, or taking their wives, or taking
nieces,
people that are important to them, like important people were taken from him.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
And replacing the princesses with those people. You don't have to kill those men, just take the people that are important to them, and it would be a parallel. That makes more sense, but instead the story treats it like it's 2 different things. Okay, we're going to kill these guys just to kill them, but then we're also going to take these random girls, and it doesn't give the importance necessary to the fact that the girls are disappearing and being killed that it does to the men dying. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it feels really imbalanced, and the
well,
story
it's like
is
an
just
afterthought. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, those girls were kidnapped last month.
It is absolutely
right?
an afterthought. That plot point that
this totally ties into those girls
that
being
they have to
kidnapped
replace the princesses is just like, oh, and by the way, we're also killing girls.
Yeah, whatever.
It's really strange, right? There was a missed opportunity there.
Here we got our I don't know if he's said it yet. I think he has already said it. Where Moriarty at this moment, he is Wraith.
Moriarty.
We get our first hint at who he is by him making the comment to Holmes, we share the same keen powers of observation. Which is telling of him being Moriarty. But unfortunately, like I said before, I don't think they really follow through on that. I don't really feel like they are equals. Maybe at fencing they're equals, I guess. But
yeah. But
anyways, yeah, I'm not thrilled with it the way that. Oh, the other thing here, and here's a connection to the last movie that we did, Wizard of Oz. They threatened to take her dog to the pound. They're gonna take away her little dog
to be destroyed.
Yeah, and And no one reacts to it except for Elizabeth, who's like, what the fuck are you talking? Why are you going to take my dog?
Holmes is like, I don't care. I don't have any relationship
And
to
they're like,
Uncas the dog.
They're like, the dogs aren't supposed to be, you aren't supposed to have dogs at school. And I'm like, why are we, you just gave away that you're a bad guy because you're going to hurt an animal or take a girl's animal away. And they're like, no one reacts to it. And they're just like, oh, they're just doing what's best for us. But suddenly they want to take this dog away that she's had on campus for forever. Also, why does she live there?
Well, now especially.
They
established
earlier.
earlier.
Her parents are dead, so she lives with her uncle.
Her parents died, so she moved on campus to live with her uncle. But now that her uncle's dead, why is she still there?
Well, and not just that, but okay, great. She moved to live with her uncle, but I guess they just can't afford to send her to school. Why isn't she in a boarding school too? Or is this before girls normally went to school? I don't know. She seems of a class that she would be
exactly right.
She would be in like some kind of school.
Maybe she's older. Maybe she's like 18 and she's finished school. How long ago did they say that she showed up with after her parents died? I don't know that they said. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. This movie, like, I do think it's a lot of fun, and I guess I qualify this as being as an excellent adventure.
Right here,
we get a little kiss.
Well, we get a kiss, and Watson very accordingly says, "This is too much."
Thank you, Watson. Yes, it is. I have to qualify saying that this is an excellent little adventure movie by saying it's an excellent little kids adventure movie. Because if you think about the plot for more than like 5 minutes, you'll get an aneurysm and be like, no, this doesn't work.
Yeah. This is something that isn't just in this movie, but in anything I ever read with Holmes and Watson. Whenever Holmes tells Watson that he needs him, I always assume that he's just manipulating Watson.
Yeah, because there's I
need you, Watson. I need you right now to do this.
There's definitely like a sociopathic swing to Sherlock Holmes and his particular brand of genius. So yeah, you get the feeling that when he says those kinds of things to Watson that seem a bit uncharacteristic of a person like that, you're like, oh, he's kind of manipulating him, and that's fucked up.
It's kind of messed up.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, Holmes.
But yeah, so
we just missed it. The moment where Holmes says, "You can get up now, Watson. The war's over." I mean, that's a reference to how Watson is later going to be a medical doctor in multiple battles.
I didn't know that.
No, you don't know that about Watson's character?
I told you, I don't know.
But you've watched the BBC show, and
I know he's a war doctor.
Right.
I know he's a military doctor.
In the books too, he's
war doctor.
He's a surgeon and a physician for the British Army in India and the Second Anglo-Afghan War.
Yeah, I know in the TV show he was in like Afghanistan or Iraq or something like that.
It fits, yeah.
But yeah, I guess I had forgotten about that. I didn't realize that the television show was adapting it that closely. I just thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, they're pretty good with the TV show too.
That's cool. That's very nice. We do discover here, or it is revealed that Cragwitch is not in fact a villain, but one of the 6 businessmen that is having revenge enacted on him. I think he's the last living one. Is that right?
Okay. So right here, she's about to shoot him, and he's going to react. And then it's, mosquitoes, got to clean this place, whatever. And Holmes doesn't react. They just went through this. Shouldn't they be like, I mean, if he's as smart as he's supposed to be, then they should be on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing is they're standing right there and he says, no, you've just got shot. Someone's in this room.
Yeah.
You know?
And also those thorns are huge. You would pull it again, out of your neck.
Again, those thorns are huge. Right. Exactly. Yeah, when he starts hallucinating here, it takes him all of like 10 seconds to get the fuck over it.
Yeah.
And that's like, I get it. Like, you've got to get on with the scene, but
we've
established that these hallucinations are powerful and they last
and all they got to do is just like say his name. But then he does fall back into it.
He does kind of fall back into it.
I made the same kind of note earlier when our first guy, the pheasant guy, the guy who was eating the roast, I don't know if it was pheasant or chicken or whatever. I think it was like a little pheasant. It took him a minute for the drug to react because he had time to go sit down and have his food brought to him, and like he reacted then, and then he went back home and reacted more. But the old man in the church, he like got shot, looked up at the window, looked back down, looked back up at the window, and was already like super hallucinating. And in that moment, I was just like, well, I guess he's really old and he's scrawny compared to the big old boy who got shot in the first scene.
There are definitely consistency issues.
But it was so fast in comparison, and this one is too.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Well, the way he gets over it is so fast, at least.
He's already hallucinated and come out of it, hasn't he? I don't think he has yet.
So.
No, he hasn't yet.
No, but the second guy, the old guy, hallucinated immediately, like instantly. But it's about this guy with this guy. See, look, there's the Slytherin. Right.
It also looks like the medical. What is it? The medical insignia. I don't remember what it's called, but
it does. And I know, and it's obviously it's Egyptian symbolism and stuff. This is drawn. They did at least enough research to know that.
Let's use the correct terminology. It is appropriated from. So. Yeah, I like a lot of the performances in this movie. I like this guy. I think I really love all of the professors. Except for the one chemistry professor earlier in the movie. I don't like his performance at all. And I like this guy's performance a lot, except I really don't like Nicholas Rowe's performance as he's getting choked.
I love that Watson can't remember his name. Is Craggy Critch. Is Criggity Crag.
I think this is the most outwardly bad thing in the movie.
Yeah?
Yeah, the performances here just don't do it for me.
There.
But other than that, I think they're all pretty solid. I think, especially for young actors, they get really good performances out of these guys. But again, Nicholas Rowe he's not actually a kid. He was like 19 when he made this.
This moment when Lestrade comes in and he says it took 4 policemen to stop him from hanging himself, right, because of his hallucination. That's fine. Like, I know he's talking about the drugs, but to me, like, I kind of chuckled at it because in my head, like, he's... this is my stretch of it. Right. But, like, actually he was hanging himself because he was so upset because of the way that Holmes made fun of him.
Because Holmes was right, damn it.
and so, like, he goes and he starts to hang himself and they talk him out of it and he's like, fine, let's go solve the case. But he blames it on the drug.
How exactly did Lestrade come to the conclusion that he would find Holmes at Cragwitch's anyway?
Holmes did give him some pictures or something with the names of the men earlier, so maybe he would have had this name.
Maybe. Well, I mean, but the last time Holmes spoke to him was before he found the drawing.
Okay, then yeah, I don't know.
And before he learned the name of Cragwitch, like Holmes didn't even know Cragwitch's name until he found the picture.
Lestrade used to work at Scotland Yard, so
let's be fair.
Let's just be fair. He's kind of a superhero,
unless Lestrade is a better detective than Sherlock Holmes. And he's fucking not. So come on. That was not a statement for you to be like, yeah, maybe he is. No, he's not.
Why doesn't she just look away from the ring right here?
Also, this kind of random, like the fact that his ring hypnotizes people now. Like, we saw that the ring distracted Holmes earlier and then like cut him on the cheek when they were fighting. But now the ring is magical and can hypnotize.
Yeah, but she's just staring at it.
And then he never uses it again?
Whatever.
I don't know. Whatever. That scene was actually the first time we have ever heard the professor's name. And as soon as his name was said, Wraith, and of course, when I watch movies for Popcorn Poops, I watch them with subtitles on so I can get all of the dialogue and everything, and understand clearly what is being said. And you don't have to
rewind to be like, what'd they say?
Yeah, exactly. So I watch with subtitles on, and that moment when Wraith, or when she reveals the Mrs. Drib to be one of the Rametep people, and Mr. Wraith walks in and she says, Professor Wraith, help me, or whatever she says. It pops up on the screen and it says Wraith, and the first thing that goes through my head is, that's Atar spelled backwards. That's the first thing that went through my head. And they don't even mention it until the very, very end of the movie. Also, when Cragwitch explains that Atar was a child who has a sister, as soon as I saw,
Wraith two of them standing together.
Right. Wraith is Atar spelled backwards, and then you see, like, right there, you see the two of them in the shot together. I'm like, well, that's Atar and his sister.
But I mean, we are supposed to know by this point who it is. Because right here, okay.
I know we're supposed to know, but the movie doesn't actually reveal that Mrs. Dribb is his younger sister and until the very, very end of the movie.
No, but right here, he knows Wraith. He knows that it's Wraith.
I
He knows
know
Wraith
that.
is Atar. He
I know
just
that.
doesn't know the name.
I know, but what I'm talking about is the whole sister connection. Because the movie, it's obvious that it's his sister, but the movie doesn't reveal that.
I don't think it ever says it.
It does at the very,
it
very
does.
end in narration, of course.
Oh, okay.
In Watson's narration, it's like, oh, and also it was totally his sister, because remember that little detail?
Anyway, so that scene right there where Watson and Holmes were walking, and they were using this running metaphor of the riddle, where they've got this riddle about the bear.
Right.
And the riddle is supposed to be a parallel to the mystery that they're solving. Something like this, usually a metaphor that runs through an entire movie like this, usually it's a sign of good writing. It's a little simplistic in this version, a little bit too transparent, I think, however.
Sure.
Where right in that scene, Watson correctly guesses that the bear is white, but doesn't know why, and Holmes responds with answers without evidence or useless. And then Holmes immediately realizes that Wraith is Atar, but he doesn't know why. He doesn't know how that connection comes to be.
Yeah.
And he has no evidence to prove it, so it's useless, just like Watson's answering.
There's some
it's a
parallels
good
there that work,
metaphor,
right.
which is, like I said, a sign of good writing, but however, a little transparent.
Isn't
so.
this just a magical moment when they get the...
yeah, when they get the flying car and they're going to crash it into a tree.
Oh, my God.
Or, I mean, it could be like a dragon or something, too. Whatever.
I hate you. I should have never brought it up. The Harry Potter...
You didn't bring it up. I was the first. I brought it up myself.
That's true. But
before you said a word.
Oh, my God.
In the first scene when he gets out of the carriage and he gets off at the boarding school, and I'm just like, oh, my God, Harry Potter.
I mean, if you take away anything from this episode, if you miss Harry Potter, watch this movie, because you're gonna get a Harry Potter movie out of it for sure.
Absolutely.
So we're coming up into, I guess this is the last act of the film. They're chasing down Wraith, who has Elizabeth, and he's taking her to the pyramid to be wrapped up and burned, I guess, with the boiling water, so they can do the ceremony on her. So she has officially turned into the damsel in distress. They must be really, really high in the air, because they almost crashed into Big Ben. And Big Ben is not a misnomer, because that shit's fucking huge. So they're way up there. But yeah, they don't crash into a tree.
No. I was being sarcastic, like I was joking about this being the car.
Where
it's not
are they actually? Because they do crash into is it a lake or is it the ocean?
Pond or something.
A pond or something? Yeah, but they crash Rupert's flying machine.
I don't think the ocean freezes in London.
I don't think the ocean freezes. Does the ocean freeze anywhere? I guess it does in the Arctic Circle, of course, but yeah. And here we've got Wraith dressed up in his costume, and he looks positively silly.
It is silly. It's so right here, I wanted to talk a little bit about, and it has nothing to do with this scene, but just about, I think it's interesting the way they deal with women in this movie.
Interesting is an interesting way to put it.
Because they don't really do anything with it. However, that is kind of a step up from the way Holmes himself treats women in the books.
Yeah.
Holmes, quotably has an aversion to women.
Yeah.
Some of the things he's in some of the books that he says are things like, women are never to be entirely trusted, not the best of them. The motives of women so inscrutable, how can you build on such quicksand? Their most trivial actions may mean volumes. Their most extraordinary conduct may depend upon a hairpin or curling tongs.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's really not a fan of the ladies.
Okay.
Which has multiple meanings here. But I just, which I don't think is really representative of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself. I mean, his dying words were, "You are wonderful," speaking about his wife. So, Yeah, so I'm not saying anything about him, but at least Holmes, the character, was not a fan of women at all. And however, that doesn't really fit into this backstory because, like, if she betrayed him or something, and that's how he became the cold, calculating guy that he is, like if it turned out that she was the sister of Atar or something like that this whole time, and that she was part of the whole plot to get him expelled from school and whatever, like that would make me understand, but it doesn't really fit into the character of Holmes, which again, they apologize for it 2 times. They don't expect this to be a true to canon story.
Sure.
But anyways, though, I mean, we have to take into account the fact that Holmes's relationship with women, specifically in the books, is a major aspect of his characterization that is often critiqued.
Yeah.
And it's notably absent from this and replaced with something really trivial and
schmaltzy, even
shallow.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I have a bit of a problem with the fact that Wraith is willing to kill young girls and old men for his big revenge scheme. But why didn't he just kill Holmes and Watson when he had a chance? Like when he discovered that they were, sneaking around, digging into all this kind of stuff. And I guess it's before they found out that he was directly involved. But
well, I mean, if this is Moriarty and we're talking about Moriarty, then Moriarty doesn't want Holmes to die. He needs Holmes. He needs him to be there to be his counterpoint.
Okay, this is before that, though. Let's be fair. Wraith doesn't really respect Holmes in that way. Like there is kind of,
which I think is a failing of this movie.
Well, absolutely. Like I think that they turn what respect Moriarty has for Holmes and that mutual respect, they turn it into like a teacher-student kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine, I guess. Like it's
I think that
it's appropriate enough for the movie.
He doesn't want Holmes to die. I mean, clearly he's the one who helped Dudley forge the handwriting so that Holmes would be expelled from school. I mean, they don't ever say it, but he has to be.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then he was just trying to get him out of the picture because he knew he was getting too close. But I don't think he wanted him to die because I think he does respect what he does. He likes him.
Yeah.
However, though, at the end, that's kind of turned on its head when he tries to shoot Holmes to kill him.
Right. He tries to shoot Holmes, and not only that, but he leaves him to die, like in the pyramid, and he fights him and all that kind of stuff. Like it's obvious that after a certain point, he's trying to kill Holmes, but up to that point, he had been killing the old men and killing young girls.
But I think he didn't want to kill Holmes. I think that's why, is because he was trying to find a way around doing that. He was trying to just get him out of the picture. He even gave him a second chance by trying to send him away after him and Watson got caught.
Yeah.
He tried to send him away because I don't think he wanted him to have to die.
Look at this destruction that's happening. They killed so many people inside this pyramid.
They did.
So many people died. Incidentally, of course, but, they still died. And this is the scene where Sherlock gets to fight Miss Drib and does just a terrible thing to her. Just when she's, I guess it's
they're
right here in this scene.
Grappling right now.
They're struggling in this scene, and she's going to try to blow this thorn into his face. And he just blew it into her throat. Oh, that's so terrible.
It's awful.
Isn't that awful?
It is.
It's brutal. That's brutal, like, I guess appropriately, like Indiana Jones. Like Indiana Jones has some kind of scary, grotesque stuff in it because it's, it's an adventure movie with a little bit of edge. Like it's a family movie.
But how could you not love this? Okay, like I know right now, unfortunately, we are in the part of this movie that is the downfall of this movie. We're having to deal with this messy plot that
doesn't
pops
really
up here
make
at the
a whole
end,
lot of sense. That's kind of all over the place
and kind of just and our emotions are hinged upon a girl who we don't care about, and like unfortunately we're at that point in the movie right now where it kind of falls apart a little bit.
Yeah.
But however, though, setting that aside, how can you not love this movie when it is sort of an adaptation of two of the really cool things that we love in modern movies,
Yeah.
like two series that we love. Well, it's not an adaptation. One of them is.
I mean, it's a
prequel essentially.
It is.
to-
It is a
not
much.
prequel,
It is a much
proto.
better. Proto, I guess. It is a much better Harry Potter movie, and then a much better Indiana Jones movie than it ever is a Sherlock Holmes movie.
Yes, very true. But I mean, how the Harry Potter movies are so fun, and Indiana Jones. Oh my God, I love Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
So kind of converging those two ideas and putting them together with Sherlock Holmes, it's inevitably going to be fun.
Right.
And it is. It's a fun movie. They're fun characters because your source material, I go back to this so much when I watch movies. If your source material is great, it's really hard to mess it up.
Right.
Well, it's not really hard,
I mean,
unfortunately, but it should be
If you're
really hard to mess it up.
if you're faithful and you manage to capture the spirit of something,
Yeah.
then the plot itself, plot holes and whatnot be damned. If you've got good characterization and you've managed to capture the spirit of something that is beloved for good reason, because of its spirit and its heart, then I think that you've got something special. And I think at the end of the day, this movie captures that stuff.
Right.
This
We've
movie,
got characters that are already well loved, that are already well developed without them really having to do a
Yeah.
lot because we know who these people are.
Yeah. And I told you this, before we were recording, but had I watched this as a child, I would have loved the shit out of this movie.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't part of my childhood. I've said that before, but it wasn't a part of my childhood. But watching it even as an adult, I would have adored this movie so much.
And I did.
So, someday when we have kids, this will be in their, in their library.
Yeah, of course. I think it is fun. I think it is still a lot of fun. The problems it has aren't so great that that I don't still love it. I do still love this movie. I love it. It makes me happy when I watch it. It makes me feel good. I love, just the music. I love the theme. Oh, by the way, the music, it got nominated for a Grammy.
Oh, okay,
and
cool.
it won a Saturn Award.
Oh,
Saturn?
okay,
Saturn
cool.
Award?
Excellent. That's great, and deservedly so. I think it really is a great score, and the theme, especially the main theme
That we're hearing right now.
it cannot be understated. It is so memorable. It's
Yeah.
a really, really great theme. And we do get, I guess this is kind of the culmination of Watson's character as, a burgeoning, nascent detective, if you will. Because he figures out how to save Sherlock Holmes, and he uses this whole rig. He rigs up this thing where he ties the rope to the chandelier and then takes the other side that has a grappling hook and he hooks it onto the wagon of Wraith, who is escaping, and it pulls up Holmes, and at the same time ends up pulling the wagon off away from the horse, and they get to save Elizabeth for the time being.
Doyle himself personally investigated 2 closed cases where 2 men wound up being, exonerated?
Yeah.
For
wow,
their
excellent.
crimes.
That's cool.
So
I didn't know that.
was Doyle, I think, was Sherlock Holmes.
Well,
Dare I say?
you told me something about someone. Yeah,
Well,
tell me about what you told me before we recorded about some
The thing
dude.
is, I mean, he's Holmes and he's Watson, of course. Every author is the characters that they're writing to some degree.
Sure.
But he was himself. He was a physician. Doyle was a physician and an author, and he often cites the creation of Holmes. He often cited it to a surgeon that he worked for as a clerk for a time, and his name was Joseph Bell.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time he cited it to him and to another physician or surgeon too. But anyways, at one point Bell wrote to him. And I love this quote. He wrote to him and he was like, "You are yourself Sherlock Holmes, and well, you know it." Sort of like, stop pushing this off on me, man. Let's
don't
not
bury the
joke
lead.
around.
Let's be real about this.
This is all you. But yeah, he was a little bit of a detective himself too, and he was really serious about justice.
So this,
as is Holmes.
Starting here, this is the last of 3 movies that I think in spirit kind of make up this movie. The first, of course, being the Harry Potter franchise, especially the film franchise, because I think visually it is pretty closely resembling that franchise. And then, of course, Indiana Jones. And finally, with this last swashbuckling sequence, I think this looks like Hook.
Movie? Really?
I think it looks
Hook?
like Hook.
Oh my gosh. If you don't know this fact, then you're going to freak out. The dog, do you know the dog's name?
Uncas?
Uncas. Do you know what it's Latin for?
No.
Hook.
What? What?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Well, you know.
At least that's what the internet told me. So if the internet is to be believed.
Well, there's imagery in the scene. Like, I think that the choreography itself looks very much like the climactic battle between Peter Pan and Hook in Hook. And there's even some very, very specific imagery. Like, there's a shot of their shadows fighting on the water that is out of that movie.
Maybe some Peter Pan referencing here.
Yeah, and they're fighting on what looks like docks in the movie Hook. They're fighting on the docks surrounding the Jolly Roger, I believe is the name of Hook's ship, and on the ship itself. But of course, the color temperature and everything is very, very different in this scene because it's cool and nighttime, whereas it's very
there's
warm.
The shadow scene.
But there
right
was
there.
the shadow shot right there. And then when they lose the swords, or when Wraith loses his swords and they go inside this fishing house right here, he actually picks up. We just saw the shot of it. He's going to pick it up and fight with it. He fights with a fishing hook.
Yeah.
Now this came out 6 years before Hook came out. However, it is produced by Steven Spielberg, and I think he very much took some imagery from this for his climactic battle at the end of that movie.
Like I said, the dog's name is Latin for Hook.
I think it's unmistakable.
Why else would the dog's name be Latin for Hook? Why else? What other reason would you name a dog Hook in Latin?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
I mean, Uncas sounds funny, but
I don't know. It just seems so strange, especially because it came out before. We talked back in our Hook episode about how Steven Spielberg had worked on doing a Peter Pan movie as early as 1983 or something, which was 2 years before this.
So this was something that was in his mind already.
Kind of in the pipeline in a way, sure. But he didn't actually get around to doing it until 5 or 6 years later. So yeah, I think it's very, very possible and in fact likely that he took a lot of this imagery for his movie because it's very similar. So those are all movies that I like that are kind of mashed up into this movie. Some, like the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom stuff, kind of feels rip-offy because it came after, right? Because Temple of Doom came out the year before.
But the other two, this is long before them.
Long before that stuff, and it feels like in a lot of ways. And not just superficially either. I think especially the Harry Potter stuff doesn't feel...
thematically in some ways, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's not just superficial, like, oh, it kind of looks like it, and it kind of feels like a little bit.
And I know, I've tried to apologize for the theory or justify the theory or something like that by saying that it's just boarding school and we're dumb Americans who don't know what boarding school looks like. But there are a lot of things about this that really are... just astonishingly Harry Potter.
You know where they shot the school stuff, right?
No, where?
Oxford. They shot it at Oxford, and they used fake snow, and it actually killed some of the grass at Oxford, and Steven Spielberg paid for it personally, for all of the killed grass.
So right here, this is the scene that when I was a child just... oh, God, it just broke me up. And not, again, because I don't think I particularly loved her either as a child. But it's him. It's this guy who is so emotionless in the face of all adversity.
Or that he should be. In this movie, again, that's...
right. He's young, so he's not quite there yet. But
it is a bit tragic, though, that his arc is getting over his emotionality, but that means becoming kind of a sociopath.
Yeah.
Like, it is kind of his downfall. It's kind of a tragic way to become...
But Watson keeps him from becoming that entirely.
Yes, exactly.
Watson is his humanity.
Right.
But anyways, though, this is the scene that, of course, when I was a kid, it just made me have all these feelings that I hadn't felt before, where I just couldn't fathom the idea of this character that was so brave and so smart and so fearless, and yet is broken by just another person who he's so attached to being harmed or dying. And of course, in the books we get the same thing, but it's with Watson, so you can draw your lines there, and that's fine. Anyways, though, in that scene, he makes a comment to her where he says that he'll see her in like a better place, right?
Yeah.
So we're supposed to believe that Holmes believes in a religious afterlife.
I'm calling bullshit on that.
However, though, I was calling bullshit on it too, because like our smartest guy in literary history, at least our smartest detective, right? I know that's a really big qualifier to say.
Why don't you deductively reason the existence of God?
Right, but however, though, when I was doing some research on it, Doyle himself was a spiritualist.
Wow, that's kind of surprising.
Now you say surprising, but his wife died, his son died, his brother died, a bunch of other important people in his life died, and he dealt with it by going into a strong belief first in Christian spiritualism, and then later just avowedly becoming not a Christian, so much so that they had trouble deciding how to deal with his remains after his death because he was absolutely not a Christian.
Interesting.
But he was really into ghosts and fairies.
Oh, wow.
He was like he even published some articles and maybe even a short novel or something like that with these pictures that later were revealed to be fakes, but that he believed had fairies in them.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, he was really into that stuff. But I think it was his way. He fell into a big depression after all those people died, and it was his way of dealing with that.
I've got a note here. You were talking about how Uncas, the dog, is named after, or it's Latin for hook. The note I have on the name is that Uncas is named after a portion of the brain associated with seizures, and seizures that develop from the Uncas part of the brain are often preceded by hallucinations, which are a major cause of death in the film.
Okay.
So that's interesting. I mean, it still may be Latin for hook.
Yeah, I don't know. I never took Latin,
which is cool and kind of maybe a conspiracy theorist-y, confirmation bias-y way of saying, oh yeah, that last portion is a lot like hook. But that's the note I have on that.
Of course, everybody gets to geek out here when we.
Oh, this profile shot. So he got the hat from Rupert. He got the jacket from Wraith. Moriarty. And he got the pipe from Watson, who bought it at the wand shop.
Yeah. And here we go right here. Geek out because we get just one little shot.
Just a moment of it. It's great.
Of the whole getup.
So yeah, we're about to wrap up. Be sure to stick around after the credits for a little stinger where Wraith comes back and signs into an inn as Moriarty. It's a very cool little scene.
God, this narration is awful though.
It's terrible.
It is
it's
probably the worst part of the whole movie.
I do. But I highly recommend this for kids, definitely. I think it's a great little kids movie, a great little adventure movie. And honestly, Harry Potter fans, I can't say that enough. If you miss Harry Potter, watch this movie because it's pretty great.
It'll bring you back. And overall, I still love it.
Yeah, and I would say I'm a new fan.
Good.
And here's our bookended
our second apology for writing this.
Yeah.
It's cool, guys. Nobody cares.
I think it's pretty...
Well, I mean, somebody does care.
It's pretty unnecessary, but, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, now that we've reached the end of the movie, we'd like to read a 5-star review that we received on iTunes, and this review comes from Sprog51. Sprog51 writes, "These two know what they're doing. This is a crisp, clear, very well-balanced movie review podcast. Although many episodes are commentary as the movie is happening, they make it accessible so that you don't have to be watching with them. It's clear they both have a history with film, and it shows in their highly informative analysis of each film. Highly recommended." Thanks so much for that.
Man, look at all these people
giving us some love.
Thinking we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If you'd like to leave us a rating and review on iTunes, we'd really appreciate it. And if it's a 5-star review, we'll even read it on the show.
As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. Please follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook if you'd like to receive updates about the show, including our weekly movie still identification game. If you have a question, comment, or movie request for us, you can reach us on our social media outlets or by emailing us at thepopcornpoops@gmail.com.
Next week, we'll be watching and talking about John McTiernan's 1988 film Die Hard. If you have any questions about that movie or related topics you'd like us to discuss, please contact us through social media or email.
Thanks for listening, and until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
We are the Popcorn Poops.
Hey there, listeners. My name is Ray.
And I'm Luke. Together we are
The Super Hammered Brothers. On our podcast, we talk about video games, anime, comics,
and so much more. Hit a clip from one of our episodes.
I'm a huge Fire Emblem fan. I play Fire Emblem. I get a blast out of it instead of Marth. Marth, you can leave Marth, you know? Marth, just go.
Why always have to think against Marth?
Marth is boring. He is the boringest guy in history.
He's like Goku. He's like a guy who comes and say, "Hey guys, how's it going? I'm here to help you save everybody." I mean, like...
No, Goku's funny because he's stupid. Forget Marth and then bring back Roy. That's what I say.
So if you can listen, Nintendo, we're gonna hashtag bring Roy back.
Roy's our boy. It should be Roy, Ike, Lucina, and Robin. That's who you need. Forget Marth. We don't need Marth. Lucina's Marth, and she's better than him. We're done. If you're interested in hearing more from us, go to our website, superhammeredbros.com.
You can also listen to us on iTunes, watch us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter.
Once again, we are the Super Hammered Brothers, and we hope you will geek out with us.